Welcome to Maryland, just outside of Baltimore, and welcome to the Hyundai Kona. This is a new version of the Kona, and we are here today so that we can do a driving review of it, but we're not doing the driving review yet. We have to wait to publish that one. So in the meantime, I want to give everybody a preview of what's to come. And Roman had a chance to do a walk around on one of these Konas before, but the one that he walked around was an N Line. So this is the Limited, this is the absolute top of the line with all the bells and whistles. And I want to show you some of the differences. Now, first things first, this being a new Kona, as you can see, it's got refreshed styling. So they've made it more modern and more contemporary. And they've done some cool things here with the design. The center high mount stoplight for one, pretty interesting shape. And then you've got this piece of trim that runs all the way down to the side mirrors. You also have this pretty unique Z-shaped line that goes through the side of the vehicle. But for as much as they've changed it, they've still kept some of the elements that make a Kona recognizable, like the cladding and like the headlight layout and like the general size and shape of the vehicle. So it's still pretty recognizable for what it is. They've just made it a little bit more modern. And you can also see here, we've got some 19-inch wheels with a pretty funky design. Now, versus the N Line, this doesn't have all the sporty kind of aero design elements to it. The wheels aren't quite as extreme. This one is a little bit more subdued and a little bit more luxurious. And one of the ways that they really differentiate the Limited version here is some of the features that you get when you step inside. So for one, we've got these light materials here on the seats. So it's a nice kind of airy gray. The door card matches. And then coming inside, you can see some of the features. Now I'm going to power this up, both so that you can see the screens, but also so that we can get the AC, because it's almost 90 degrees and very humid in Maryland right now. Now, that's a 12.3-inch screen. Does get you Apple CarPlay and Android Auto wireless, and that's a 12.3-inch instrument cluster. So good size screens, good resolution. They're fairly responsive. So it's an overall good screen to have, good setup, not worried about that. But just because they have some decent screens in here doesn't mean they've skimped on hard buttons. So down below, you do still have hard buttons for your climate controls, which we always love to see because this just makes things simple. They're always right there at hand. That never changes. So you don't have to take your eyes off the road to adjust your climate settings. And you've got some additional hard buttons up here for your volume and some of the controls for your center screen. Down here, you also have a couple USB-Cs, as you can see. And one of the things that comes with this being a Limited is the fact that it's got ventilated seats. They're not just heated, they're also ventilated. That's a feature that you get here. Here's your drive mode selector, and if we go to the center screen, you'll see we've got normal and sport. Those are your two settings right there. All-wheel drive is available on the Kona, and it's an extra $1,500 on top of whatever model you get, and we'll talk about pricing toward the end here. But this model, yeah, it's available with all-wheel drive. So if you live in snow country like we do, that's an option for you. Now, this steering wheel is pretty cool. It's pretty minimalist. I like the fact that they don't actually put any logos on the center of the wheel. It's just this little bit of trim. I think it gives it a nice look. Wheel also feels good in the hand. And another good feature that you get here on this, being a Limited model, is the turn signal blind spot camera. So it comes on when you turn on your turn signal. It gives you that camera view. That's specific to the Limited and a really good feature to have. You also have a sunroof here. Not a massive one, but still nice to have a sunroof, and it just makes it feel a little bit brighter and more open on the inside of this. I will say that this interior and the lightness of it is might be my favorite interior on these Konas, just because it does feel actually pretty premium, especially considering the price point. You also have these modular cup holders down here, so you push a button, becomes a cup holder, or you can tuck it away so that it's just out of the way. However, I do have to gripe about something, and that would be this key. Now this key is perfectly functional. You can use these features right here to pull it in and out of the space. This car has a power lift gate because it is a limited, and you can open it there. Of course, you got your lock and unlock and remote start and your panic button, but that's not the problem. The problem is the way it feels in the hand. It's very light and plasticky, and it doesn't have a sturdy quality feel. And this is the first thing that you interact with when you're gonna get in one of these cars and take it for a drive. And when your key feels this flimsy, it just doesn't give you the best feeling about getting in the car itself and driving it. So I wish they would go to a different key. That one is not my favorite, but as far as things go to gripe about, it's certainly not the worst one, because even though it doesn't give you a great feeling getting into the car, I mean, the car itself, these materials for the most part feel pretty nice. There are some cheaper plastics in a few spots. There is this hard plastic here at the top of the door, which is a little unfortunate because we like to rest our arm up top here, and that doesn't feel that great. But for the most part, the materials on this interior are actually fairly nice. Now, another big difference between this and the previous Kona is its size. So it's grown basically in all dimensions, but the biggest dimension in which it's grown is length. It's about 6 inches longer, almost 6 inches longer than it used to be. Now, this still has a smaller footprint than a lot of its competition, so it hasn't gotten massive, which is good because this car being small is one of the reasons that people like them. But that extra length, plus the fact that they made these seats thinner, that means that you actually have surprisingly good legroom here. So they're saying about 3 inches of extra legroom in the rear, and I would believe it because, I mean, I'm 5'10". I'm not super tall. I'm not freakishly tall like a lot of my coworkers, but even if I was Roman or Tommy or Andre and I was like circus sized, I would still probably be reasonably comfortable in the back here. I'm 5'10", and I've got no problem whatsoever sitting behind myself. Another really nice feature are these vents for the rear seat passenger. And of course, you've got USB-Cs down there as well. And also, of course, you've got some cup holders here. So all of that is kind of a given. And yeah, it's right there. Now, if we move further back, you can see power lift gate. So I mentioned it earlier, that's part of this being a limited. And there you go, it opens up to reveal my camera bag and 25.5 cubic feet of space. If you fold the seats down, 63.7 cubic feet of space. So decent trunk. When you do fold the seats down, they don't go quite all the way flat. There's still a little bit of a hump. Trying to reach and do it. There we go. So you can see that it slopes upward just a little bit. So yeah, it's not perfectly flat, but still gives you a decent amount of space. And then I should also mention the powertrain. So pop in the hood, you've got a couple options depending on what model of the car you get. If you get either a limited or an N Line, there it is, then you get this 1.6 liter turbo paired up to an 8-speed automatic transmission, 190 horsepower, 195 pound-feet of torque. But if you go for the base engine, it's 2 liter, naturally aspirated, 147 horsepower, and that's paired up to a CVT. So I would opt for the 1.6 liter, especially because we live up at altitude, and that 147 horsepower, especially in a naturally aspirated engine, is gonna feel pretty anemic. This 1.6 liter turbo is probably going to feel better up at altitude. So the 1.6 liter is just gonna have more power output if you live in a hilly place like we do. And in general, just looking at it on paper before having driven it, I would say that that would probably be the engine to go for. Now, you can also get this, like I said, in front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. If you opt for all-wheel drive, you do take a little bit of a hit in fuel economy. It makes the car a little bit heavier, and you pay an extra $1,500. But if you live in snow country, it's probably going to be very much worth it. Now, again, we got to talk about pricing. So these cars, according to Hyundai's website, start at $24,100, but that's not including destination. So you have to pay a little bit more than that realistically. And if you want to get into a model like this limited, these start at $31,650. If you want to get all-wheel drive, add another $1,500 on top of that. And even if you step down from this limited into an N line, you're still looking at over $30,000. So if you want the 1.6 liter, it's going to cost you over 30 grand, which means that this is definitely not the cheapest vehicle in this segment. So you'll have to consider if the luxury and some of the features and build quality that you get on these is worth it to you over some of its competition, because I can tell you that a lot of these materials and design, they do feel better than some of the other cars in this segment. I think it's worth more than some of the other cars in this segment from my personal opinion, but whether that's worth you going out and spending your own money is going to depend entirely upon you. So if this is a car that you're in the market for, I highly recommend keeping an eye out for the full review that we have coming, where we get to talk about how this car actually drives. And let me know what you guys think in the comments below. These are available now in dealerships, so you can go check them out yourselves. And we'll see you all in the next video.